Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from and when you're joining us. It's your girl, Marcy Thomas, and I am so glad to be back with you for another episode of the BGC Book Club. So I'm just telling you, come on in the room, come on in the room, tell your friends, go ahead, share this out so people can be a part of this conversation live and in person. So I am coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, originally from Cleveland, Ohio, with a bunch of other places in between. And our special guest actually lives in Paris. I never lived there, but I have been there. So I'm excited just to talk a lot about her adventure. So if this is your first time here, we are always in this space to share stories that are by, for, and about us. And tonight is no exception. And so I am extremely pleased to have with us Robin Allison Davis, Robin Allison Davis, who is an Emmy Award-winning journalist, writer, and producer based in Paris and born and raised in Washington, D.C. area, and actually went to Howard University. So all you Howard folks out there, you know, what they say, HU, you know. Yes, she's here representing Howard University. She is a two-time breast cancer survivor and surviving Paris. This book that we're going to be talking about tonight is her debut novel, or not really a novel, but debut memoir. So I can't wait to get into it and just learn more about her story. So without any further delay, let's welcome Robin Allison Davis to the BGC Book Club. Welcome, Robin.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Oh, yes, it's indeed a pleasure to have you here. As I told you, before we came on, I really enjoyed reading the book yesterday. It was my Sunday pages. They were my Sunday pages. And I really enjoyed learning about you and reading your story.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
you're welcome. You're welcome. So the book hasn't been out that long, maybe a week or so.
It'll be 2 weeks tomorrow,
Okay,
actually, so not very
wow.
long.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So, what has this adventure been like for you in the last couple of weeks? Just getting your story out there for people to be able to read it.
Oh, it's been a whirlwind, to be honest. I was in Paris and threw a party in Paris before the book came out. Then the very next day, flew to the US. And then a couple of days after that, the book came out. And it's just been so many different events, talking to so many people who have told me how they felt about the book, who have finished it already, like you did.
Mhm.
And it's the manifestation of a childhood dream. I always wanted to be a published author, and it really took a while for that to set in. It didn't even set in the day the book came out. It took a
Yeah.
few days for it to set
Okay.
in.
Okay. Yes, and it's very exciting for you to do that, and the fact that you are starting with a personal story. Because I made a little flub initially and said novel. It's not a novel. This is real talk. This is your actual life. So I definitely can appreciate the fact that that you've taken the time to do that and really thinking about what that process could have been like for you, especially telling some things that are sometimes challenging, difficult, whatever the case may be, but really navigating that and telling your story. So knowing that you always wanted to be a writer, was it that made you want to start by telling your own story?
Well, as a child, I always wrote short stories and I had so many novels in progress. And I just never thought that my first book would be about me. I never
Mm,
thought that something interesting enough would ever happen to me that I would write a book about my life. So
wow.
that was a little crazy for me. But to be honest, when I decided to move to Paris back so many years ago, I did my research by reading books by other people that had moved to Paris. And I
Hmm.
read a lot of books by women who didn't look like me, who
Right.
moved to Paris and they 2 days in met a man, had a
Mm,
great time. Like maybe they had a few cultural misunderstandings, but that was it. And I was like,
okay.
okay, well, smooth sailing seems fine. But I couldn't really relate to those books.
Hmm.
So when I went through breast cancer the first time, I thought, well, I should write a book about this. I should write the book that I wish I could have read.
Right.
And then I put it to the side because I thought, you know what, no one's going to care, Robin. It's not a big deal. No one's going to care about your life. And then I got diagnosed the second time during COVID. And I
Hmm.
said, okay, if I make it through this the second time, then this is definitely a book and I need to write this book and really get it out there. And so
Hmm.
that's what pushed me to do it.
Yes. Again, I appreciate you telling the story because, what I immediately thought of is Audre Lorde and her
Hmm.
cancer journals.
Yes.
This is your take on something, your journey as well. So it's very
Mhm.
brave, it's very bold. And now your book is going to go in that canon for women who find themselves navigating that journey. And then also there's the part of you living in Paris. So that adds a whole nother, type of
Yes.
adventure. And it really is
Yes.
an adventure for you.
Yes, and I was really inspired by Audre Lorde's The Cancer Journals. I mention it in the book
Mhm.
because the way she talks about breast cancer, she's so real about
Mhm.
it. I
Mhm.
feel like she wasn't trying to be inspirational. She was just telling you what she was going through.
Right.
And that was also my goal. I didn't have a plan to be a motivational speaker or anything like that. I
Right.
wanted to tell my story and hope that it will find its audience, that people will relate to it and will understand that, hey, sometimes everything is not rainbows and sunshine.
Right, right. That's true. That's very true. Life has its ups and downs, and
Hmm.
as you mentioned in the book a few times, there's an elevator.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a merry-go-round. It can be all these.
Yes.
Life can be all these different things. So now, leading, of course, you had a whole entire life before you wound up in Paris. So, just tell us a little bit about your background growing up in DC, and some of the things that led you to even think about what it would wanting to live an international life.
Well, growing up in the DC area, I love it here. It's where I am right now.
Mhm.
And I'm really close with my family. I talk about my family a lot in the book. I
Yeah.
went to Howard University, which was excellent school. Yes, HU, as you said
Of course,
before.
I didn't go there, but I know the chant.
Yes. And when I moved to New York after graduating from Howard, I started traveling a bit with my friends. It was kind of the very beginning stages of like kind of Black travel groups and people
Mhm.
finding each other to travel with. And the more and more I traveled, the more I thought, it's kind of interesting, this life abroad. I wonder if I could ever do that. But then
Mhm.
I always pushed it to the back of my mind because I didn't see that many of us doing
Right,
it. So I
right.
thought it wasn't really for us.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was one of the things that kind of pushed me eventually. I'm sure we'll probably get to that, what made me move. But yeah, I would say that I really had kind of a really great upbringing in the DC area. I've always been very kind of open-minded to travel, even traveling with my school as a kid
Yes,
to
yes.
Europe, which was not a great experience, but it
Right,
was very
right,
eye-opening for me. Very
right.
funny and eye-opening.
Yes, yes, and yes, it's definitely it's interesting that you got the chance to go when you were like what 12 or
I was
13.
12. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so it's just different because you're a young person anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't get to go until I was in Europe because I was in the military. I was in the Air Force, and I got stationed in Madrid. So
Oh,
I can
okay.
relate. And
Yes.
like I didn't know the language. I was just over there.
Yes. Yes.
Kind of hanging out and kicking it around because a lot of times, and many people who haven't necessarily done European travel may not realize that a lot of them speak our language because they're kind of forced to learn English, where
Mm-hmm.
we don't necessarily learn a second language when we
Right.
are coming up through school.
Right, right. It's true. So I mean, I did learn Spanish in school, so it's very funny that I ended up moving to Paris.
Right,
Because
right.
I even minored in Spanish at Howard, so I really just did not, I guess, have the foresight to know that
Right.
I would be moving to Paris.
Mhm.
But you're right. It was super eye-opening as a child to go over there, and I never could have imagined that that 12-year-old would grow up to make an entire life abroad.
Yes, yes, that's pretty powerful. And as you said, really before a lot of people really started doing it, because we're seeing it now, people are like, where can I go get me out of here?
Yes.
But at the time that you moved over there, that wasn't the case.
No, Blacksit was not a word back then.
Yeah, it was not a word. But even though it wasn't, we know historically that there have always been Black people who have decided to move, to Paris
Mhm,
specifically, but abroad in general, just to
mhm.
seek something that's different from what's happening here in the United States.
Yes, yes, it's true.
So, so you're following in the footsteps of many greats in that way. So, of course, you grew up, went to school, had this close relationship with your family. Went to Howard University, graduated, and then you wound up moving to New York to pursue a career in telling,
Mhm.
but a certain type of storytelling.
Yes, so I moved to New York right after, I would say almost about a month after graduating from Howard. I had a job offer to work for NBC News. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was the dream because I wanted to be a broadcast journalist. I had done an internship actually the summer before with the Weekend Today show. And so I was like, I just know I want to get back to 30 Rock. And so I did. And I had a 10-year career at NBC News producing for Dateline NBC. And I loved it. Oh, I loved it. It was just, it was everything that I wanted out of the role. I traveled a lot. I worked on really interesting stories. I worked with the best people. I really, really enjoyed my coworkers. But to be honest, after a while, I felt stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, okay, well, this job is great, but I can kind of do it with one hand tied behind my back. And
Right.
what if I could switch things up a little?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something to think about it, as a Black woman, highly educated, went to one of the best schools in the nation and all of that. And it's like you go into work situations. I'm sure other women can relate to it as well.
Mhm.
And you just think, oh, I am the creme de la creme, I should be able to reach all these higher heights in my career. And sometimes it just doesn't happen.
No, no. I felt like I was hitting a glass ceiling. And I thought, well, if you've had this idea of moving abroad before, maybe you should do it now. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have a kid, you don't have a husband. And at the time, I was thinking, okay, I really want an international career, so I'll just apply to jobs abroad. And
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't working out for me because all
Mm-hmm.
the applications ask if you have working rights. And I did not. So they
Mm-hmm.
did not want to sponsor a visa for the types of roles that I was applying for.
Okay.
So once again, I felt stuck. I felt
Okay.
stuck in a different way. I was like, okay, I have this dream, but now how do I make this dream a reality? And I decided to take the very drastic move of quitting my job
Yes.
and applying for a student visa to move to
Mm-hmm.
France because that's one of the easiest ways that people move to France.
Mm-hmm.
People do it whether they want to study French or they do a master's degree, which is what I did. I decided to do a master's degree at the American University of Paris. And I thought, okay, that will give me the opportunity to make connections where I can get a job where they're not so concerned with the working rights or they will sponsor me.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the path I took. My family was not happy.
Yeah, yeah, and you do talk about that in the book. So,
Mhm.
for anyone who hasn't watched before, we're not going to tell you everything. It's not necessarily spoilers like in the case of a fiction book, but there are things that you got to read it to find out. So, don't
Yes.
just know we're not going to tell you everything.
No, no, not at all.
But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, number one, I admire your courage in saying, hey, this is something that I want. And even though everybody else around me might not understand it or agree with it or think it's a good idea, I'm going
Mhm.
to do it anyway. And I really admire that and can appreciate that because I've had some times in my life where I've done that, where it's like, you know what? I know that this is what I want and this is what's good for
Mhm.
me. And so I could really appreciate hearing that part of your story and also the fact that you kind of took a roundabout way to meet your goals.
Yes, I was pretty determined. I was very determined, actually, not even pretty determined. I was very determined to make it work. And my thought process was with the student visa, okay, I can do the master's program for 2 years. If it doesn't work out, I'll just move back.
Right.
And worst case scenario, I'm coming back with student loans and higher education. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I thought that was the safest way for me to make the leap. I wasn't going to do it without having a job or any sort of network or anything like that. The school really provided a lot for me, a lot of support.
mm-hmm. Well, that's good that it did. So
Mhm.
now a lot of people can't even imagine what it would be like to go overseas. Maybe they've done a summer thing or whatever, but to like
Mhm.
really move there and embrace living. And one of the things, and it happens throughout your story, is realizing that living in Paris isn't like living in the United States, at all. The apartments and all that sort of thing. So that is like a recurring theme throughout the book. Like, where is she going to live and what's it going to be like? So
Yeah.
what was that culture shock like for you?
Well, I visited Paris. At that point, I think I'd been to Paris 3 times.
Okay.
And living in Paris is not like visiting Paris. It's very different. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of, well, first of all, French bureaucracy going through having to get all your paperwork and different things like that. It is not for the weak. They make it pretty difficult. And you understand why, because so many people want to move to Paris.
Right.
They're not going to make it just like, okay, sure, come on in. It's great.
Mhm,
There's
mhm,
a few hoops that you have to go through. And
mhm.
sometimes you'll end up crying on the street. You just, sometimes you go through it. Everyone
Yeah.
has a story about going to the prefecture, and that's the prefecture is where you go for your visas and things like that. If you
Mhm,
ask any expat in Paris, there's a lot of stories about
mhm,
that.
mhm.
And just going through that process, trying to find an apartment that was affordable but also nice is a
Right.
recurring theme throughout the book. I've
Yeah.
had so many apartments, crazy apartments, that
Mhm.
I just did not expect when I was even thinking of moving to Paris. I was looking at the pictures online, like, oh, yes, I'll have
Right.
this beautiful Haussmannian apartment with the vaulted ceilings and this. No,
Yeah.
it's not really what I ended up with.
Right.
So it was a lot of different challenges, but I was so determined. I gave up so much to be there
Mhm,
that I
mhm,
wasn't going to just give up because of a few bad apartments or trying to find my community or things like that. I quit my very good job to be
mhm.
there.
Yeah.
So I've got to make it work.
You got to make it work. You got to make it work. And so then, of course, there is a time where, you start understanding some things that are happening in your body.
Hmm.
And of course, being overseas, that's, that's a big part of the book. That's a whole different experience because we think about American healthcare and, what we do if we notice something that's off or, how we go about getting mammograms or whatever. But for you also, you were very young. So this was something that you
Yes.
weren't even thinking about. You weren't at a stage in life where you would have been getting mammograms anyway. So, and I'm not going to tell the story for you, but just, like a little bit of kind of what happened that kind of led you into the space of having to now get into the French medical system.
Well, I just turned 34 years old, and I had just started my first job in Paris. And I'd
Mhm.
worked so hard to get that contract. I talk a lot about that in the book. And at one point I did feel something in my chest, but to me it didn't feel like what I thought it was supposed to feel like. Because I just didn't know. I said, is this really what it feels like? Or maybe it's just a skin issue or something.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when I went to my doctor, she was just like, well, something doesn't feel right in this breast. I feel something. Let's do some testing. And that really dropped me right into the thick of it with like blood tests, biopsies, sonograms, MRIs. And it really, well, it set me on the path that I'm on today. It
Mhm.
was, yes, it was very shocking for me to be
Mhm.
34 and I don't have a family history of breast cancer. I have a very large family, and on both sides, no one has
Mhm.
ever had it. So it was shocking. And then the speed with which everything moved was
Right.
shocking to me as well, because
Right.
I was diagnosed on June 25th and they wanted to operate on July 12th. I said, well, is my
Right.
cancer that bad?
Yeah.
That's pretty
Right.
fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And to be in this foreign country without my family and trying to figure out if my family can come over that
Mhm.
quickly. It
Mhm.
was it was quite the journey. It really was.
Mhm. Yeah, I can't even imagine, what you might have been thinking or going through. Because of course, you're young, so you're not thinking anything's going to be wrong anyway. And then when you
Hmm.
find out that there are some things that you have to do to discover what's happening with your body, the whole system, because their system is set up different than ours, and in some ways, I guess it's better, but then you are still kind of new and just now getting started. So there's a lot of things to have to figure out and navigate.
Yes. And navigating it when I'm not fluent in French. But
Yes.
then even we talk about how I navigate the French medical system, but even in the US, even people in their home country with
Mhm.
cancer, it's difficult. You
Mm.
don't, and a lot of people can't really guide you through it because they haven't been through it. Even some of the French people I knew, they'd never gone through it or helped anyone through it. So they didn't even really know the answers to my questions. So it was just a very extremely difficult situation. And I definitely made it through. I
Mhm.
do love the French medical system. It was very good to me,
Mhm.
but it was a steep learning curve, very steep.
A steep learning curve. And you also, as you mentioned, your family was at home, and there were times when they were able to come and be with you, but then there were times where they weren't. So one of the
Mhm.
other like things that I really love about the book is that you show the power of making friends and building relationships and having really one of my favorite things, which is chosen family. And
Yes.
you had to do that, just to help
Mhm.
have people to help you navigate everything that was happening.
Yes. And I will say I didn't have to do it for that. I think when you move abroad, you have to move abroad kind of with an open mindset and willing to meet people and willing to make friends and build community. And I am a very social person. I am an extrovert. And so I was going out and making friends and like building my own community, and I just had no idea how much I would actually need them.
Right, right,
Once
right,
I did, I was like, wow, well, I'm glad, I guess, that I was making all these friends
right,
because
right.
now I really need it.
Right, right. Yes, it would have been a different story had you not had, people that could support you and things like that along the way. But of course, that's not the only reason, we know that. But it was good that you had those people who were willing, and as you move throughout your process,
Hmm.
these were things that were happening. So of course, you have as you've already mentioned, there was your first experience,
Hmm.
and you think that things are going to be okay. You're kind of told everything is okay. And then, there are a lot of things that go on. Again, y'all, we're not going to tell you everything, but there is a process, of healing from the first surgeries. And well, before I go any further, you having to really learn how to advocate for yourself in a space where, French is not your first language, but having to learn
Hmm.
how to navigate and speak up for the things that you want or don't want.
Hmm. Yes, that was something that it was difficult for me to do because not only when you are in a foreign country, you're thinking, okay, well, they do things their way, and that's different than how we do. So maybe I should just listen to them. But then also, when you're going through something like cancer, there's so much going on in your head
Right.
that you're not really sure what to believe. So it's easiest to just go on the path that's been set for you.
Right.
And I wish I could say I quickly realized, but I did not quickly realize.
Mhm.
But once my head was able to clear a bit, I said, no, Robin, like you need to be able to stand up and advocate for yourself more because you are here alone and you're not
Mhm.
showing up. I'm showing up to appointments with my friend, but I'm not showing up with a whole family or a
Right.
husband or something like that. I need to be able to speak up and push back no
Mhm.
matter what.
Mhm. And
And
that's so important, really.
it is, and it's something that a lot of women struggle with. It's something that a lot of women of color, Black women, struggle with. And my friend actually made the connection I talk about in the book, in the very first chapter, that I saw Serena Williams play.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I didn't know at the time that I had breast cancer. It was her first time playing after having her first daughter,
Mhm.
Olympia, I think her name is. And everything that she went through and having to advocate for herself to get the test done and things like that. And I was just watching her in awe at Roland Garros, and then to go through something like a major medical situation where I had to advocate for myself. I was like, wow, it's true. I really did have to learn from what she went through because you just think that everyone knows best, but no, you need to trust your gut as well.
Right, right. And get those second and sometimes third opinions, all of those things
Absolutely.
that are
Absolutely.
important. And really, those lessons and hearing you talk about what you were navigating is really important for us here as well. Because how many
Mhm.
times, in the United States, as you mentioned, Serena Williams, she was in the US when that happened. And she's, somebody who has all the resources and all of the things, and people still weren't listening to her.
Mhm.
So it definitely shows that it's important that we do speak up for ourselves, or we have an advocate if for some reason we can't speak for ourselves, and all
Mhm.
these different things that sometimes we might take for granted that it's not important. But if you find yourself in a situation, you may really need, to have certain paperwork done, or, certain directives, or,
Mhm.
all these sorts of things, just so you can make sure that your voice is heard, even in the case where maybe you can't speak up for yourself.
It's true. And actually a friend of mine who was in the book, she is a nurse and she told me to never go to my appointments alone. Don't go to chemo alone, all these different things. She said, you need to show the medical staff that you have people that care about you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That puts more pressure on them to make sure that they are doing things correctly. And that kind of scared me when she first told me that. But I think it's very good advice.
Definitely, definitely. So I'm thinking about my mom with a friend of hers. She's there, all the
Mhm.
time, with him, making sure that, she's supportive and things like that. But stuff like that does definitely make a difference, because otherwise people will, mistreat you
Yes.
if they can get
Yes.
away with it, right?
Yes. And they need to know that there's someone else next to you who will check them if they are trying to mistreat you.
Right,
So
right. So, I mean, of course, you're in another place, and as a Black woman, with some of the things that you experienced from a medical perspective, did you feel like it was racially related, or was it more the fact of American, or you didn't sense anything like that?
I sensed more medical misogyny than racism, I would say.
Gotcha, gotcha.
I think a lot of times, me being a single woman, I was not listened to. I think that if I had had a man with me, it would have gone so much different to have him
Mhm,
speak up for me. I will say there was an instance of medical racism when I saw my radiologist. And the fact that my radiologist did not understand how to make sure that Black skin does not burn during
mhm,
radiation.
mhm, mhm.
I'm like, you're a doctor. You're supposed to treat all types of people. You've never looked this up? You've never thought about this? You're just telling me that I'm just going to burn and there's nothing I can do about it? Even one of the surgeons I have, he doesn't know how to do stitches or cut on skin that scars the way that a lot of Black people's skin scar with keloids.
Mhm,
Didn't know how to do that. So every time he cut me, I scarred up a lot. And he was
mhm,
just like, oh, well, that's just how your skin is. Well, sir, there are ways that you can do it where this
mhm,
won't be a problem. So
mhm.
those were some of the things I experienced. There are much, much bigger things that are in the book that I'm leaving
Right.
for people to discover on their
Right.
own.
Yes, discovery. Absolutely. But yes, I just brought that up because we know that medical racism is a thing. Like,
Hmm.
if you're in pain, people don't think you're really in pain, things
Hmm.
like that. So that's why I
Yes.
just want you to know, not to say there's not racism or anything like that in France, because we know that it is. It's everywhere,
It's
really.
everywhere.
Right. But it's just nuances might be a little bit different, So
Yes.
that's why I wanted to ask that particular question. So of course you go through your first, journey, and families there to support you and different things like that. You have all, friends, family, and you're still working. So navigating that while you're working as well.
Yes, I actually hid my diagnosis the first time from my
Mm,
job because I had just started the job. And so I was so afraid that they were going to let me go if they found out. I had a very short work contract. It was only about 3 or 4 months, I believe. And I said, well, if they find this out, then they're going to let me go at the end of
mm,
the contract. So I
mm,
didn't say anything. And I don't regret it, but it made things a lot more difficult, definitely. People didn't know what I was dealing with, and I had to just slap on a smile and try to work just as hard as I could, even though I
mm.
had so many different things going on.
Hmm. And it speaks to the thing of us being, the strong Black woman, so to
Yes.
speak. And I mean, I understand why you did it, because hey, you're new, and if you don't, keep your job, then that messes with your insurance, that messes with your
Hmm.
income. You might not be able
Hmm.
to stay as a country. All these different
Yes.
things that you have to consider while you're dealing with your health. So I said this to you before we came on, but I'm like, ooh, I appreciate you telling the story. It's so powerful just to think about the things that you did. And you are a survivor, in more ways than one, just thinking all the things you had to navigate.
Yes. Yes. It's been a lot, but there's also been a lot of good times too.
Yes, yes,
There's
yes,
been, which I do talk about in the book. It's been a roller coaster, lots of ups and downs.
yes, yes, yes. Now, before we get into the second time, in the midst of all of this, you are a young woman in her 30s who is single and wants to mingle.
Yes.
So you're also, dating and thinking about relationships and things like that. So what was,
Mhm.
I know because I read the book, but what was that part of living as as an American in Paris like for you?
I really enjoyed it. I was coming from New York City, where I lived for 10 years, and the New York City dating scene was, I was over it. I was so over it. So moving to Paris, it was exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of dates with a lot of very interesting people. Men that I felt like the caliber of men that I was meeting was quite different
I
than
can
the men
imagine.
I had been meeting before.
I can imagine.
And the way they view dating there is also very different. People don't really date multiple people at one time. It's
Okay.
like you go on 3 dates and then you're together next.
Mm.
That's it. It's like, wow, okay, that's fast. And so coming from the New York dating scene, I appreciated that.
Right.
Where in New York, you can date someone for a year and they say, oh, we're just talking. You're like,
Right. Longer than that,
right,
longer
right.
than that.
So I did go on lots of great dates with guys. I even had a French boyfriend, and I really, I did enjoy the dating scene.
Well, that's good because we always say, to your point of a lot of the movies and books and stuff that we might read from others, just think, oh, Paris, you're gonna go there and you're gonna automatically fall in love and all these sorts
Yes.
of things because it is a city of romance and like we've seen, all of those things and like the bridge where everybody's putting their locks
Yes.
on it, all this kind of stuff. So there's definitely a lot of romance tied to being in Paris, but I guess
Mhm.
sometimes the fantasy and the reality aren't always necessarily the same.
No, no, they are not. And I, as I said, I enjoyed it, but also I found that because people get into relationships so quickly, the relationship doesn't always necessarily have as much weight as
Mm.
it would in the US, where you're deciding after months of dating, okay, yes, now we're in a relationship. Deciding after 3 dates, I'd ask one guy I dated, I said, well, how long was your last relationship? And he said a month. I said, not a relationship. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so just it's just completely different way of viewing things.
Right, right. And it's so funny because as you're saying that, a good friend of mine, we've talked about that before because she writes books that have not romances, but may have some romantic elements. And usually
Mhm.
people kind of fall fast. And I'm like, girl, that would never be me because I'm like, I'm suspicious. Like, what do you want?
Me as well.
Like, why are you trying to lock me down so quick? What's really going on?
Right. Especially now since they have all these shows and documentaries about love scammers and stuff like no.
Yes, yes. I'm like, what are you trying to pull?
Yes. I had to check you out for a bit. Keep my eye on you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, of course, all of these things are going on. You're still working, making friends, and all of that. And then you have a second diagnosis,
Yes.
unanticipated.
Yes. So the second diagnosis actually happened in 2020,
Mm.
which just 2020, what a year, right?
Right.
So my last surgery was January of 2020. And I thought, okay, I've got my last reconstructive surgery. I am going to be the woman I've always wanted to be. I'm about to really improve my French. I'm going to really start dating and this and that. And we go into COVID, and Paris, well, France had very severe lockdowns
Hmm.
where we couldn't leave home. You had to have a permission slip. You could only go a certain radius. So it was difficult. And I actually didn't leave my apartment building at all the first
Wow.
lockdown.
Okay.
And that lockdown lasted almost 3 months. And
Wow.
I didn't leave home because I said, well, if I just beat cancer, then I shouldn't go out while this thing is going. We don't even know what this really is.
Right.
And so once the lockdown finally lifted, I had to get a physical. It was my time for a physical actually through my job. They re-upped my contract, so I needed a new physical. It's something they do in France. And I went to the physical and she said, "Okay, I'll do your breast exam." And she did it and then did everything else. And then she was like, "Oh, I forgot the left one." She said, "But you
Hmm.
had a mastectomy there, so I'm sure it's fine." And then she
Hmm.
felt something in my armpit on the left side.
Hmm.
And she said, "Well, I don't really like the way this feels, so let's take a look. Let's get some tests run." And once again, I was dropped into a whirlwind of testing, but this time during COVID. And I will say that I think that at this point, I really see the difference between French healthcare and American healthcare,
Okay.
because I had my blood test done. Blood test didn't show that the cancer markers were high or anything like that. Did a
Mm-hmm.
biopsy. Biopsy was inconclusive. Did a MRI.
Mm-hmm.
MRI was inconclusive. Didn't really see anything. Did a PET scan.
Wow.
And when you think about how much all these things cost,
Yes.
it's cheaper in France, but it still costs a lot of money.
Right.
And my doctor saw the PET scan results, and he said, "You know what? I'm not happy. This is still annoying me. Let's just cut you open and take a look."
Mm.
So went through surgery, and he pulled out the lump, and they tested it, and that's when they found out that it was a lymph node that tested positive for cancer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for me, I just know with my experience in the American healthcare system, a lot of times you are denied or delayed for
Right.
things because of the insurance companies and because
Right.
of how much things cost.
Right.
But in France, it's more about, we need to find out what's going on. We need to get you well. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not about the budget. You don't
Right.
have the delays and things like that. And the fact that all this happened during COVID too, in an
Wow. Yeah.
overwhelmed healthcare system, was
Yes.
incredible.
Yes, and that was something really, as I was reading it in the book, just to think, as you said, all these different tests and quickly, it's not like, oh, wait 6 months and come in, where
Right.
things have a chance to progress because you're waiting even more and more time to get things done. But it's like, no, we're going to do this, and this and figure out what's going on. But
Mhm.
one of the things that we kind of skipped over it a little bit, because I'm trying not to tell the whole story.
Yes.
But the first time you did get a mastectomy, but you did not get, you didn't go through like chemo and radiation and things
No.
like that. So and that's not to say what would or wouldn't have happened. We can't, nobody could
Right.
predict that. But just to understand that now that it's coming back again, you have to
Mhm.
also pursue some other avenues that you didn't take the first time.
Yes, and I will say the first and second time I had cancer, they were different types of breast cancer.
Yes. Yes.
So who knows if doing other treatments the first time would have changed anything.
Right.
But yes, the second time he said, okay, well, you've got to do chemo, you got to do radiation, you have to do hormone therapy. And it was a lot. It was a lot to have to jump into in the middle of a pandemic where
Yeah.
I was already afraid of getting COVID.
Right. Right.
All along I had cancer. Who knew?
Right.
Um,
Right.
so it was really difficult for me to wrap my head around, especially the idea of having to go to the hospital so much during a pandemic. I was
Mm-hmm.
terrified. I was
Mm-hmm.
terrified. And then to know I would have to go through chemo, and who knows if it's actually going to work, and the borders are closed and my family can't come.
Right.
Oh,
Right. Right. Yeah, that was definitely a space where, as I'm reading and my heart was pouring out for you. I know that you're okay because, we're having this conversation, right?
yes.
But it was like, man, I can't, again, can't even fathom what that would be like to be away from the people who are, your quote unquote primary support system, and
Hmm.
they're not able to come and things like that. And you're dealing with this. And of course, we know all around the world, people are, suffering, we're losing lives all around the world.
Hmm.
And then you have to go, you don't have a choice.
Right. Right. It
Mm-hmm.
was it was very scary, and knowing that I was so immunocompromised as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when we talk about my community in Paris, I think one thing that's important to know is when it comes to expats, most expats or immigrants or whoever, everyone who's living outside of their home country, for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, they have left their family and everyone they know to be in
Mm-hmm.
this country.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a deeper understanding when you're going through something so tough that we need to show up for that person, because
Right.
that person's family is not here. So
Right.
we need to be the family for them.
Right.
And my Paris community really stepped up for me, and they were really there for me.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing, as you're saying that. It reminded me of, being in the service. And as I mentioned, I was
Mhm.
stationed in Madrid for 2.5 years, a little over 2.5 years.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing because, you're away from your parents. You're away, you're off living your own lives. So
Mhm.
everybody is kind of supporting one another. There's also, you see a lot of people get married real young, stuff like that too.
Yes.
I'm away from home. I need love.
Yes.
I did not fall into that trap, but yes. But But you know, just certain things that you see, and you do become like family. You do become community and support one another and help
Mhm.
one another and things like that. So, that was really good that you were able to, you know, to have that while you were going through it, and really your family was still a part as well. You know, because
Mhm.
you know this is 2020, so it's not like we didn't have technology where they could chime in.
Yes.
I thought that stuff was pretty cool as well. That they weren't there physically, but they could still be there with you, you know, in the ways that they were able to.
Yes. I mean, at this point, I feel like the book, some chapters of the book, I should say, sponsored by Apple or something, because we were wearing FaceTime out.
Right,
We were
right.
FaceTiming all the time,
Hmm.
which is something actually we still do now. We didn't stop it. But thanks to technology and FaceTime, I was able to get that support from them.
Hmm. Hmm. And also, one of the things you talk about is that because you are so young going through
Mhm.
this, even when it came to like going to different doctors' visits and things like that, or looking for support groups, because yes, there's your, what should I say, your personal support, your tribe,
Mhm.
your family, your friends, but then there's also the thing of finding people who are going through or have been through what you've been through for that type of support as well.
Mhm.
So, you know, you had to figure that out too.
Yes. Yes. And trying to find a support group in Paris was pretty difficult for me. Eventually, I did find one, which I talk about that experience in the book.
Mhm.
But when I first started out, the first time I had cancer, I the Facebook groups and all that, it was overwhelming for me. It was just too much information, too many questions, too many sad stories. I couldn't handle it. I could not
Mhm.
handle it at all. And I would say the second time around, I was really able to find the support. And even the people that I met in Paris, we still were supporting via email because we
Yeah.
couldn't get together. We were all
Yeah, that's very true.
immunocompromised.
Very true. That's very true.
But via email we were still able to support each other, but it was difficult to find that kind of support in the way that I wanted.
Mhm. Mhm. And yes, I'm thinking, yeah, because you get in these groups and people are just saying whatever. You know what
Yes.
I mean? Yeah, I can imagine that that would be challenging to do that. And again, as a young person, but not to say that young people obviously don't get breast cancer. We have heard of
Mhm.
other cases. And, you know, as a person who is a survivor, this is not in the book, but I'm just asking what you think about.
Yes.
If there's anything that you wish that the medical system could or would do to help people who maybe are younger really understand the importance of early detection and things like that.
What I think is that a lot of people are being diagnosed with breast cancer young, and I think people are afraid by that, and they're just like, why is this happening, why is this happening? But I think it's actually happening because people are getting better with the early detection,
Mhm,
which
mhm,
is so, so, so important. You really raise your chances of surviving with early
mhm,
detection.
mhm,
And if more women from a younger age knew how to do the breast cancer exams, how to check for a lump, all these different things, because I mean, in a perfect world, insurance companies and medical systems would say, hey, do mammograms from a young age. But
okay.
that type of system overhaul, I don't know if we'll ever see that. Even in France, it's considered too young to get a mammogram.
Mm,
So it's something that people are really just, they're really sticking to the age 40 part, which is
mhm,
unfortunate. But I think just increasing the education around how we can check ourselves and
mhm.
what it feels like, what it doesn't feel like, all these different things. I had pain in my
Right,
breast. And every time I Googled lump and pain, they said, oh, that's not breast cancer because pain is not really something associated with it. And then now they do say that pain can be associated with breast cancer, but that was one of the reasons why I assumed like, oh, I can wait because this wouldn't be breast cancer. It's painful.
right,
So
right.
I think just increasing the education. I actually met with a foundation today, the Mara
Okay.
Foundation, and they work with high schoolers to give
Oh,
them breast
that's good.
cancer training and in terms of like how to do your self exams and all of that. Starting as young as high school is amazing
That
because
is
it's
amazing.
it's a lifelong thing.
Hmm. Yeah, because I can remember seeing, you know, the cards and stuff like that, that you maybe could put in your shower and things like that.
Hmm.
But, you know, just really understanding how important it is to do that and, you know, beginning to know your body and
Yes.
because sometimes it could be, your period's about to start, so your breasts are sore, and different things
Yes.
like that, that you might not think much of it. But I love that you said that, and that you are also doing some things that will, ultimately help to change the way we do things.
Hmm.
Doing your
I
part.
hope so. I
Doing
hope
your
so.
part, yes, because that is important. I mean, and even in writing this book and telling this story, because to me, it's the story of your journey of being in Paris, and it's called Surviving Paris, but also just how you healed, and even in spite of challenges, whether it was stuff that was going on at work, or where you want to live, or the
Mhm.
crazy French guys that you might have run across.
Yes.
At the end of the day, this really is a story about you and your survival, and how really that city saved your life.
Hmm. Yes. Yes, I feel so incredibly bonded to France now
Mm,
because of what I've been through. I mean, it's the country that saved my life, not just once, but twice.
mhm,
So
mhm.
how can you not love it after that?
That is something. So, of course, throughout this whole process, there are, I mean, a lot of things that you're dealing with because it's your health, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of ups and downs, and even and people at work being understanding or maybe not understanding.
Hmm.
And I know there was a point where you say something about like the empathy or whatever that maybe the French didn't have, because the French have a certain reputation
Yes.
versus what you might have experienced in the US, because people know that you can take them to HR if they're talking crazy to you.
Right.
Things like that. So that's something as well.
Yes, that was quite the adjustment for me. Which is funny because I was actually working in a very international company, but it was people that had been living in France for so long, and I just felt like the empathy was not there. It was
Hmm.
all about like toughness and, well, we don't really care.
Mm,
Granted, some of them necessarily didn't know what I was going through, but that
right.
wasn't, I don't think that's really an excuse to
Hmm.
treat someone that way or to have that type of work environment that I was in was a toxic work environment. And it made things really difficult for me. And I thought, well, if I was back in New York at NBC with all these coworkers that I loved so much, would they
Right.
have treated me like this? No. No,
Right.
they probably wouldn't have. And so it was one of the many times where I really questioned my decision in terms of
Mm,
moving to Paris.
yeah, because that's tough. Because I mean, we know that stress can create a lot of things in our lives, and being in
Hmm.
toxic environments can create a lot of things in our lives, and how sometimes if you are trying to heal, it's the better your environment, the better that process is. So
Hmm.
again, kudos to you, for really pressing on and pressing through, even when it got tough. You all have to read the book, but going through, the chemo and the radiation, all the different things that were happening in your body as you're doing that, trying to heal, but then, suffering as you heal, so to speak. So that's a lot as well.
Yeah, it definitely was. And even when you make it through all of the treatments and things like that, there's still so many things. It changes your body in so many different ways
Hmm.
that you're still dealing with a lot. Someone told me recently that she believes survivorship is harder than going through treatment
Mm.
because you're dealing with still some of the physical ailments, some of the side effects from all the treatment you went through, or the hormone therapy you might still be on for 5 years. But now also you have the time to have the mental effects and the emotional effects
Mhm.
because you're not just kind of going through the path of treatment, like, oh, do this next, do that next. Like now you have time to sit and think with it all
Mm, mhm.
and really grieve what
Right.
you thought your life was going to be like, or grieve your breasts, or grieve everything that you went through.
Mhm. That is something, and we know that grief, it ebbs and flows. You never know when it's going to hit you. It could be the
Hmm.
simplest thing that, and you talk about that in the book. It could be something simple that kind of sets you off, or something that you stay away from because it's a part of that journey that you went through. So
Hmm.
yes, it is something, and I'm just thinking, of course, I know people, there's the mental side, and people may seek therapy, or of course have these support groups and things like that. So beyond, being in a space where you're physically in a better place, are you still continuing to do some of those things just to help for the post portion of it all?
Yes. I am a Christian, so I do still hold on to my faith as well. I
Mm-hmm.
do meditation. That's something that I picked up going through my cancer journey. It's really helpful to just calm my mind for a few minutes. I can't do it for very long,
Yeah.
but I try. I try my best. I do a lot of Pilates.
Mm-hmm.
I love to do Actually, I love to do really hard workouts if I can.
Okay.
I do like a a boxing CrossFit type thing because
Mm-hmm.
when I am just dying in the workout, I can't think about anything else.
Oh, yeah. Makes sense. That makes sense.
Yes, I'm just thinking like, oh my gosh, is it time? Is class over yet? Like, that's all I can think about. I can't think about everything else is going through. I can get out all that energy. um Doing that, going to therapy. Yes, there's a lot of things that you have to use all the tools in the toolbox, right?
Right, right.
So
Now, one of the things you said is that you would, well, this was like earlier on when you were trying to find out what was going on with you health wise, that you did a lot of walking. So you still do a lot of walking?
I do still do a lot of walking. I love walking. It's my favorite way to get around, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Paris is an extremely walkable city, and I
Yes.
live right in the center, so I just walk everywhere anytime I can. And actually, my doctor told me that I should spend more time by water. And she said, if
Mm.
you spend more time by water, it'll help you calm down, regulate your nervous system. And I live not too far from the Seine River. So a
Okay.
lot of times I will leave my apartment and walk by the river, walk all the way down 1 hour, 1 hour back, and just enjoy myself, just hearing the river and watching the sights, sitting down, sometimes just looking out at the water is helpful.
Yes.
I still do a lot of walking. I run through shoes like crazy.
Hey, that's cool. That's cool. I know when I was there years and years ago, and I was actually there in February,
Mm.
when I went. But it wasn't cold that the weekend that I was there. Actually, it was
Oh,
like a Valentine's Day weekend that I was there.
okay.
And I just loved it so much. And same, I did a lot of walking around and just
Mhm.
exploring all the sites and things like that. But it's definitely one of those places that I would like to visit again to really be able to
Mhm.
see. I went to Versailles as while I was there as well,
Oh,
so that
nice.
was a pretty,
Beautiful place.
yeah, it's a pretty neat experience. And I know you talked about like traveling around. I do want to talk about that real quick because I did have
Mhm.
that experience as well. That people who've not been over there don't realize that traveling like throughout Europe is kind of like traveling from state to state here.
Yes.
So you have been to a lot of places. There's some that you talk about in this book, but I was looking it up. You've actually been to like 35 countries.
Yes, I think it's actually 41 now.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
okay, okay,
I had this plan where I said, "Oh, I'll keep up with my age." So I
okay,
think I'm at 41.
okay.
And yeah, I love traveling throughout Europe, but even more so, I love traveling throughout France.
Yes.
France has such a diverse landscape. Like you have mountains, you have beach, you have coastlines. It's incredible. I love going to Brittany and Normandy. It reminds me kind of like of a Cape Cod type feel. I
Mm-hmm.
love going to the Riviera for all the wonderful beaches, and as well as a nice little town like Antibes is one of my favorite. I love going to Chamonix in the Alps and seeing, Mont Blanc, the tallest mountain in Europe. I love doing these things. And it's so easy because the trains are
Yeah.
just they're fairly affordable and they're fast. So
Mm-hmm.
you can just do that for a weekend. And that's something that I love to do. I love traveling throughout France. It's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful country. People need to yes, go to Paris, but
Yes.
please go outside of Paris and
Yeah.
see the rest of what the beautiful country has to offer.
Yes, I need to put that on my lifetime list. Not gonna call it a bucket list, but I'm
Yes.
put on my lifetime list to come back and see some of the other places because it's kind of the same with Spain. Is the same way,
Hmm.
that there's like Madrid and some of the other towns that you hear of, but then you go into
Hmm.
some of the other places and things like that. It's a totally different experience, and I just think it's wonderful that to be able to see that, to view the world that way, to be able
Hmm.
to meet people from some of everywhere.
Yes. Yes, it is. And you meet people that speak so many different languages, and just so many different cultures. I really do enjoy living in Europe. I think if I were to move back to the US, one of the number one things well, I don't know if it's the number one, but one of the top things that I would miss would be the ease of travel.
Yes, yes, yes.
Mhm.
Well, girl, based upon what's happening in the U.S., stay where you are. stay in Paris, stay in France for sure. You want to do that, especially right now with everything that's happening. So, and you did get your citizenship. So,
Yes, yes. 2 years ago, I became a French citizen.
okay. So, is that process hard for those who might really actually not just want to travel for a long time, but actually want to move someplace else?
I wouldn't say it is hard, but there are a lot of things that you have to do. You have to be living in France for at least 5 years. You
Okay.
need to be paying taxes for at least 18 months. You need to have a certain level of French, which will be tested. And so you need
Mm.
to have a certification of your level of French. You need to know your French history because you'll be asked that in the interview.
Oh,
And you
wow.
have to make a certain amount of money, have all these different documents. I had to have my parents' birth certificates
Wow.
translated into French, all these different things. And it was quite a process for me, but I made it through. 2 years ago I had a wonderful ceremony in the Pantheon where we sang the national anthem and all of that. And yes, very, very proud to be a dual national of
Cool, man.
France and the US.
Yes, yes. And you see the big smile on my face. That's so exciting to
Yes.
me that you have done that. So, of course, Robin, believe it or not, we are almost at time. The hour went by fast, right?
It did. It did.
So I know that your book baby is a couple of weeks old, and so
Mhm.
you are still out and about. Right now you're here in the US, and I'm
Mhm.
sure is it out overseas as well yet, or is that forthcoming?
No, that is forthcoming.
Okay.
There are a few English language bookstores, like the Red Wheelbarrow in Paris, that carry the book,
Mm-hmm,
but it's
mm-hmm.
not widely out in Europe yet. No.
Gotcha, gotcha. So while you're here on
Mhm.
your promotional tour, where are some of the places that people will be able to come out and see you in the next few weeks?
Well, on Saturday, I will be in Atlanta at the Wolf Creek Library for a breast cancer event that is from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And then next week or the week following that, I will be at the Book Joint in Chicago. That is on October 12th, and that is from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. I will be speaking and signing books, and I've only been to Chicago once, so I'm pretty excited to
Ooh,
go back to
okay.
Chicago. Gonna eat some good food.
Oh yeah.
And then after that, I will be in Los Angeles at Reparations Club on October 22nd, and people can come see me there. And I will also be in Philadelphia October 30th at Harriet's Bookshop.
Okay. All right. So you're making your way around. I love
I
that.
am.
And I'm not going to be here when you are here. So
Mhm.
I'm sad about that I won't get to see you when you're here in person when you're here in Atlanta. But I lived in Chicago I told you I had a bunch of places in my life.
Yes.
I lived in Chicago for a while. So you're going to love it there. You're getting there before it
Good.
starts to get cold. So
Yes.
that should be good. And actually, Harriet's Bookshop, I believe the young lady who owns that just wrote a book as well. I
Yes,
believe
it's Me
so.
They Follow,
Me
Janine
They
Cook.
Follow.
And it
Yes,
also came out from Amistad.
yes, yes. Actually, she's coming here too. So
Oh, good.
yes,
Okay.
I try to get some good folks here. But it was definitely an honor to speak to you, to hear about more about your story, hear more about your journey living in Paris, your journey with your health and wellness.
Mhm.
And I know that it's going to be inspiring to many others who read about your journey and the things that you're going through. And to know that if you really, really want something in life, I got to go back to that. If you really,
Mhm.
really want to do something, figure out how to do it. And sometimes you might not be a straight roll. It might be, might have to bend and curve a little bit to accomplish your goals. But,
Mhm.
you knew that you wanted to live overseas, and you did what you needed to do to make that happen. So everybody keep that in mind. That's good advice right there.
Yes.
That's a good thing
Indeed.
right there, right there. So, okay, well, Robin, if you don't mind holding on for me for just a quick second, I will let you grab some water, like breathe real quick. I want to tell everybody what's up and coming over the next week or so, and then I will come and say goodnight to you. So don't hang up just yet.
Okay.
All right, see you in a moment.
All right.
All right. I really enjoyed having a chance to read Robin's book as well as have a conversation with her about surviving Paris. I loved Paris so much when I had a chance to visit there. So I definitely am going to take her advice and go back. And when I do go back, make sure that I make place and time to be able to see some of the other beautiful places of the country as well. So thanks again, Robin, for being here. If anyone wants to grab a copy of the book, if you haven't already, it is available at the Brown Girl Collective Bookstore, which is just that, browngirlcollectivebookstore.com. If you go there, you will find the book. It is Bookshop, so don't be alarmed if you get there and you say, what is this? It is attached to Bookshop, and Robin's book is prominently displayed there if you need to pick up a copy. So in terms of upcoming guests, I will be traveling to an event this weekend. So later in the week, so I will not see you until next Monday. And we will have Mia McKenzie with These Heathens. Actually, she was scheduled earlier in the year. We had to reschedule. So she will be here on October the 6th. And then the following day, we will have Anna Gifty here with the double tax, how women of color are overcharged and underpaid. And right now, with everything that's going on, that's a very important book to like really, figure out some things that we can do for ourselves in times like these and the times that we've always dealt with, if we're honest. And last but not least, 2 weeks from today, which will be October the 13th, we will be talking about the life and times of Octavia E. Butler with Susanna M. Morris. The book is Positive Obsession. So all of you Octavia E. Butler fans, please join us for that. We know a lot of you love her and love her work, and this is like a story about her life and work. So I look forward to seeing you all for that. So in the meantime, in between time, don't forget to pick up a copy of Surviving Paris by tonight's special guest, Robin Allison Davis. And I look forward to seeing you all again in a week. Take good care. Bye-bye.